Hi, everybody. Welcome to Woman Up. My name's Leah and I'm joined by Sue. Hi, Sue.
Hi Leah, how are you?
I'm very well. Yeah, not bad. Sorry, I don't know where my button's gone. As Sue knows, I'm not very good at this part.
Oh,
Okay, it's our pleasure to introduce again for the second time, Angie Jones.
Hi.
Angie is a dedicated mother and a relentless advocate for women's rights and children's safeguarding in Australia. Angie co-hosts Turf Talk Down Under with legendary Turf Stasia Free. And together they created actually a very groundbreaking platform as Australia's first podcast to address the madness of gender identity ideology. Turf Talk Down Under opened the door for critical conversations on this issue. And I know myself and many other women watched your show every week, Angie, and loved it.
yeah,
Angie played a pivotal role as one of the main organisers of the Let Women Speak rally in Melbourne 2023. This event, which intended to give women a platform to speak, faced backlash when neo-Nazis appeared uninvited, leading to a smear campaign from certain Victorian government officials, such as Liberal leader John Pesutto, who supports legal recognition of gender identity, and former Premier and transvestite aficionado Dan Andrews. Their mischaracterization suggested that Angie and other women at the rally were somehow associated with these Nazis, which has unfairly damaged their reputations. By framing the event speakers and organisers in this way, the Victorian government's accusations have attempted to skew public perception, trying to make it appear as though the cause for women's rights and child safeguarding is a fringe issue and somehow linked to extremist agendas. Consequently, rally speaker and brilliant women's rights advocate MP Moira Deeming is now pursuing a defamation case against Victorian Liberal leader John Pesutto, with Angie's name heavily involved in the recent case due to her organising role and, of course, that infamous tweet, which I loved.
yeah.
Today, Angie joins us to share her perspective. Hello, Angie. Welcome.
Hi Angie.
Hi. Hi. Thanks for having me.
How's
That
it
was a
going,
wonderful,
Ange?
good. That was a wonderful introduction. If I ever need a Wikipedia page, I'm coming to you. That was awesome. It's the first time I
Anytime.
haven't, first time I've heard myself described in such glowing terms.
You have
And
done
yeah, and
so much, though. You've done so much, and your name has been everywhere in this for completely. I just don't know how you must feel about that, but you can tell us.
oh look, first I want to say thank you for mentioning Turf Talk Down Under because Stars and I, we had no idea that this was a groundbreaking thing. It was just something that we did because nobody else was doing it.
Mm.
And the feedback that we've had over the years, now that we haven't done an episode together for 18 months, the feedback that we've had, we didn't realize that we've started something really important. So it's just lovely to hear that it meant something to someone because we were just two women sitting in their back room with
Mm.
animals running around or other interruptions, just trying to bring some unity into the gender critical movement in this diverse and sparse country. So yeah, it's lovely to hear positive feedback like that.
Yeah, you really
um
it's honestly. Yeah.
Mm.
yeah, good. Yeah, as far as the deeming trial, I was fortunate that I knew that it would I would be heavily featured in it. But I couldn't really say so. I didn't realise that it would be as bad as it was, and that the other members of the Liberal leadership team would be adding to the defamation as well, and using the cover of court and privilege to defame me further as a gang of four rather than just one individual.
Can you explain
So,
to me how in a court proceeding, even though John Pesutto basically it was supposed to be an apology, it was a pretty poor apology, but then he's gone on to the court case and then claimed the same things that he did back in 2023 and since that time. So
I think he's done more than that. Like, he is within his rights to bring up in court the original issue and say that, that is what he believed. He's within his rights to do so. But I actually think he went above and beyond that. And I believe that he breached my agreement with him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would like that to be investigated, but we'll have to wait and see if that happens. So
it's pretty poor when he puts out, what was it, it was this year, wasn't it, May 2024, yes. That apology to you and Kellie-Jay, and yes. I think most of us that read that thought it was a pretty poor apology if that was an attempt at an apology, but he did say that you were both passionate women's rights activists.
That's right.
And then it comes to the court case and all over again, he's defaming you and Kellie-Jay all over again.
Well, I've been very clear that I never wanted to accept that apology. But I was instructed by my solicitor that was, probably the best that I could get under the circumstances. I didn't have vast amounts of money to defend myself in court, to afford, a decent legal team. I just sort of reluctantly agreed because I was also informed that Kellie-Jay had accepted it, and I thought, well, I can't do this on my own. I'm the nameless other woman who in her personal life's been severely impacted by this. But as far as people out there, I'd be sitting at a table full of Liberal Party things and they'd talk about this trial and this other woman, and I'd say, excuse me, that's me, And they're like, whoa, because, to the public, it was just, Moira, Kellie-Jay and another woman.
But can you tell us how this has affected you? So since March 2023, when Pesutto got up there, it wasn't just Pesutto, it was Daniel Andrews as well, and basically claimed that you were all Nazis or Nazi sympathisers. So the impact that it had on your life since that happened?
Well, Andrews was smart. He didn't name names, and that was an inconvenience to us, and it was ridiculous, and it was hurtful, and it was, it was actually quite shocking and gaslighty. Like, we all had the feeling here in Melbourne of somehow being gaslit because the Premier had made a clearly false association with feminist women and neo-Nazis who are polar opposites to each other.
That rally was a nasty, hateful event long before anyone offered up the Nazi salute. Right? Be really clear about this. And you might say that the Liberal Party, are increasingly becoming a nasty, hateful little rabble. Why would you make it harder for trans Victorians? The notion that people are choosing this for fun, it's so offensive, it's so cruel, it's not mainstream thinking, it's not the big-heartedness that our state is so well known for. It's just wrong. The attorney made it clear that we will move to ban that Nazi salute, just as we've banned Nazi symbols. That needs to be done properly, though, and there is some complexity to that, so we'll do the work to do that properly. We don't want that being subject to challenge, but I think it's the right thing to do. There's no place for that sort of far-right extremism. There's no place for that anti-Semitism. But it's more than anti-Semitism. It's about hate and a complete lack of respect and disregard for anyone who's different. Anyone who's different. And that kind of evil intolerance is not acceptable, and it's certainly not acceptable in our great state, where I think that sense of equality and inclusion and respect means more than it means in some other places. At least it means more to me and to our team. So we'll get on and make that reform. We'll have more to say about that soon. I've had many people from the Jewish community, and indeed many other minority communities, contact me these last 24 hours, 48 hours. It's a very distressing thing what we saw on Saturday. None of my MPs were at it.
So it wasn't so much that Andrews did that because he was clearly, an ideologue and a dictator, and his popularity was dwindling. So that wasn't really a surprise. But what was a surprise was that the leader of the opposition not only agreed with him, but actually named names, particularly my name, who I have, as the court pointed out, I have absolutely zero connection to neo-Nazis, apart from the fact that I've had one in court for 6 years, or an associate of neo-Nazis in court for 6 years. So, I'm just there going, what are you talking about? And it was all in relation to a tweet that had been taken completely and utterly out of context.
That rally was organised by people who have known and established links with people who have Nazi sympathies, promote white supremacist views and ethno-fascist views. That is odious, it is unacceptable. I will never, ever accept any member of the Parliamentary Liberal Party under my leadership ever associating with anybody who shares a platform with people who peddle hate, division and attack people for who they are.
Now, if I had known that my tweets were going to be scrutinised by the media and the Liberal Party, I may not have gotten into that tit-for-tat conversation with trolls that were known to me, that were, you know, distant acquaintances when I was on the left. Now, I probably wouldn't have made that tweet. However, even if I had that audience, it didn't mean what they said it meant. And that was very clear as far as I was concerned, because in the very next tweet after the incriminating tweet, I said I despise Nazis almost as much as I despise pedophiles. So it was clear that I was not referring to transgender people in that tweet. I was clearly referring to the person that I was replying to, and I was referring to people who eroticize, you know, infancy. So the fact that it was so misconstrued and my name was used and my image, and there was, you know, nobody ever asked me what it was all about, whether I meant what was said in the tweet, whether I meant it was transgender people, you know, who I was talking to. Nobody asked me anything. You know, a few months in, Sky News had me on and they actually did ask me questions, and they said, look, that they thought it was quite clear that, you know, what was being alleged about me wasn't true. But by then, Moira Deeming had already lost her job on the basis of, you know, false associations between Kellie-Jay and neo-Nazis, which probably had a little bit more merit than my tweet. You know, it was a really difficult time because it was such gaslighting. But it wasn't just gaslighting on your personal level, like if a friend betrays you or a partner or something like that. It was like, who out there has seen this and who recognises me that I don't know about? The first sign that it was out in the public and it was going to harm me was when my daughter came home from school and told me that her friend was not allowed to come to our house anymore, but she could still go to Dad's. And that was the week after our event. Now, I'm quite sure that her typical lefty mum probably saw me on the news because the pictures of the champagne video were everywhere. And, you know, and here's me doing the school run, wondering who had seen this stuff about me. I work 3 jobs, and one of my bosses just kind of mentioned maybe not to come in for a couple of days just in case someone recognised me. I don't think she meant any harm by it. I don't feel that she was, you know, taking sides or discriminating against me. I think she was protecting her business, but I took that very personally and I didn't want to go into work. I, you know, started to avoid going out in public because, you know, I had contacted my local MP and she wouldn't return my calls. I had actually rung her hysterical and crying, saying, you know, I'm not this, you know, I have standing in my community and I've been misrepresented. Can you please take my calls? And she just refused to take my calls. And then she sent me an email weeks later saying, oh, well, you know, if you have a problem with what was said about you, maybe you should contact a lawyer. So I was really sort of feeling isolated within my community. It's really hard to explain to someone who hasn't been through that sort of spotlight of being a private citizen and having something horrendous, being accused of something horrendous and not having any voice to talk back. Now, all I had was my Twitter account, but my Twitter was the thing that got me into all that trouble. So I was sort of, while I was trying to defend myself online, I was also sort of watching my own back, scared that I was going to make things worse for Moira or for Kellie-Jay. Like I felt a tremendous sense of responsibility for what happened to Moira, even though what I'd done was unintentional. I felt devastated that my actions had potentially destroyed her career.
Well, if you
now, she never saw it like that.
Angie, anyone had looked at that comment in context, they would have understood exactly what you were saying. So
They
you
weren't given an opportunity.
No, you were a political pawn. Your tweet was used when they knew the context. Pesutto and his leadership knew the context. They took it out of context to pursue a political agenda to remove Moira from the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
And it shone a light on exactly how they feel as well, because they interpreted your tweet as saying that transgender people were pedos, but you never mentioned trans in that tweet at all.
No, I didn't. No,
Which is what came out in the court case when they asked him. They said, Moira's barrister said, why did you think about transgender people when you read this? Oh, yeah. It was clear that's what she was talking about. It's like, no, that's in your brain, mate.
Well, the judge understood when he knew what the context was. He clearly understood that it wasn't said in relation to transgender people. And we know you, Angie. We knew when we read that tweet that you would not have said that, because it's just not something you would.
No. But people weren't given the opportunity to see it in context, and that was the problem. So, and the thing too, at the time, I was still firmly rooted on the left, thinking that I was part of the left. But what happened, because of the negative attention that this all put on us as a group, of TERFs, the women on the left who had been my support network had basically shunned me. They said, well, we don't care what happens to you because you should never have worked with Kellie-Jay Keen because we told you that she was bad news. So not only did I have all this abuse, but my traditional support network that I relied on was taken from me. So they kicked me out of groups without even telling me. I had these crazy people like that, Kylie, who's a notorious Twitter troll, saying all this stuff about how I'm not actually a feminist and how I'm also far right and, on the Nazi payroll or something. So I was also being attacked by my own side. And I think for me, that was the hardest thing. And the weirdest thing was that I found solace in people who had very different political views from me. Like the women who reached out to me were women who were from the right, who had also been victimised by the left. So it was a really confusing time and a really confusing headspace to be in.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine how that would have been. But I am really glad that you made that tweet, because I think it's just shone a massive light on their agenda, and how they've used your tweet to mean something that you didn't mean has just woken, I think, a lot of people up.
Yeah.
And the Nazi thing as well, going through that when it happened, knowing that there was no Nazis involved in any of the organisation of any of those rallies, it was surreal and it was weird gaslighting. It was, to see Dan Andrews standing up and saying that and then raising the trans flag.
And for me on a personal, on a personal level too, like I've had a stalker for nearly 7 years, and he had requested that the previous incarnation of the neo-Nazi group that attended our rally, or that gatecrashed our rally, he had requested they go around to my brother's nursing home, because he lived in a nursing home because he has a disability, and they bash him to find out where I live. So he'd basically asked the equivalent of the National Socialist Network to bash my disabled brother to find out where I lived. So I was already scared of these Nazi monsters. I was, for 6 years I've been fighting this associate of theirs, this person who has their extremist views, and then the Premier and the opposition leader accused me of being him. Now, that was devastating, because that gave him reason to mock me. And what he did is, because I've still been in court with this bloke through this whole process, and I eventually got a 5-year intervention order on him. That's how dangerous he is. A man I'd never met in my life until we went to court, that a magistrate put a 5-year intervention order on him. But he has now appealed the order, saying that I'm using my public profile to demonise him, that he is now the victim, and also that my allegations that he is linked to neo-Nazis are false, Because I am, according to the Premier and the opposition leader. So, you know, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars that I could have put into other legal matters trying to defend myself against this neo-Nazi stalker, and that this process has also undermined my efforts to get him to stop stalking me. It's just been ridiculous.
Angie, there's a podcast, isn't there, about what happened?
Stalking.
Yeah,
yes. Oh, yeah, there was. The ABC actually did a podcast that they intended to follow up on. So the ABC, you know, they intended to do a follow-up on that, but because I came out as gender critical, they dropped me. They won't have anything to do with me.
But that was an excellent podcast because So if anyone wants to know about that situation, because that's still available.
It is. It's background briefing, and it's called Doxed.
Angela says her first contact from David Clarkson, the trolling account, came after she posted on the Facebook page of Dr. McMahon's workplace. She'd seen an online campaign about Dr. McMahon, and she posted on his practice's Facebook page to ask for more information.
So me being me, I hop on and said, oh, you know, what's the deal? I didn't say anything rude. I've got copies of what I said. I didn't say anything offensive. I didn't accuse Dr. McMahon of anything. I said, I want to hear from Dr. McMahon.
Angela was then blocked from the page, and not long after, she received her first messages from the David Clarkson profile. It accused her of defaming Dr. McMahon and said, "This bitch is next. She was fucking warned, but wouldn't listen."
Next thing you know, another fake profile comes, another David Clarkson. This one was David Clarkson and Associates. And there was this Clarkson character and a whole bunch of other profiles that I didn't recognise, all saying, you know, who is this bitch Jones? Where does she live?
And that's how this whole saga kicked off for Angela.
Did you turn up to the actual? Did you turn up in person to the case, to the Deeming Pesutto case?
I was there for all but 2 days because for me to process what was happening, I wanted to be in the room when they were talking about me. I thought it would make it more difficult for them to lie about me with me in the room, and I believe that it did. I also, you know, when they said things that were clearly not true, I thought it was important that people could read my face, people in the room could read my face to see my reaction to it. So I just need, because, you know, I just want to put this behind me, and turning up every day was my way of saying, you know, you can kick me as much as you want. I'm going to drag myself up, and I'm going to front up, because you can't intimidate me.
Yeah.
You can't silence me. You can't intimidate me. You can destroy my life. You can destroy my mental health. You can do whatever, but you won't defeat me. And I also wanted to turn up because I feel responsible for what happened to Moira, even though I'm not. And I wanted to show solidarity with her. And, you know, yeah, because, you know, I've copped a lot of flack for being associated with women who have conservative views. And I wanted to show a united front between, you know, former lefties and women who are conservative, because, you know, this movement needs that. It needs a united front. It needs a hands across the aisle approach. And I think it was really important that all women are represented, because this isn't just a case with Moira versus Pesutto. This is a case between the government versus women everywhere.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. I think she'll win, and I think it'll be a win for all of us.
Yeah. I'm just disappointed that, you know, I couldn't bring my own case, because I think I had a very strong case.
I'm just gobsmacked that he continued the lies into the court case.
Yeah.
It's the desperation of a desperate man clinging to power. And he doesn't have conservative values, though, which is strange. He's more to Labor or the Greens.
Yeah, he'd Labor light.
Yeah, and that's what has been so strange, is to see a Conservative that really goes against all the values that Conservatives say they have. So why the hell is he in the Liberal Party?
The strange thing too is that the media is in cahoots with him. But I think the reason for that is because Labor want him to be the leader because he's a weak opposition leader. The easiest way for Labor to maintain their power, despite the dwindling support for Jacinta Allen, is to have a weak opposition leader where people think, oh, well, I may as well vote Labor because all he's offering is Labor light. So, you know, Labor's controlling the media, and the media is basically keeping Mr. Pesutto as the good guy because it benefits Labor.
Yeah, that's interesting, and it makes sense what you're saying, because I can't understand why he's a Labor leader.
No. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Watching him and the lies and how worried he was about how Andrews would perceive the situation, and that recording between Moira and one of the leadership team, and you could hear that Moira was more of a leader than what Pesutto was. What's her name? Chris got, but whoever it was in the leadership team in that recording, and I thought, oh my God, they're so pathetic.
So, Moira, thanks for coming in. I think you know what it's roughly pertaining to. We've got a problem, a huge problem now, because people think, rightly or wrongly, that we walk in lockstep with Nazi protesters and Nazis.
Very obviously, I'm not a Nazi and I don't support Nazis.
Miss Deeming then tells her boss that the rally she attended had nothing to do with the Nazis who gatecrashed it.
This is not about that. This is about Nazi links and perceived
Are you
links.
accusing me of actual
No,
Nazi
to
links?
the protest.
I want you to be assured that it's not true. What is it going to take for me to prove to you that that is not true?
Yeah, it was fascinating, and the fact that secret recording existed too. You know, that guy sat in that room and barefaced lied about me, a person he's never met. He doesn't even believe that I'm Jewish. I mean, how mental can you be? You know.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, you know, who would sit in she says she's Jewish. It's like, why would I make up being Jewish, particularly in this political climate? It was them that forced me to be public about being Jewish, and straight after that, you know, 7th of October happened. And I'm like, great, thanks, Libs. As if you haven't ruined my life enough, you've now made me a target for even more abuse. Thanks.
But isn't that very trans-like, though? Because I've watched all the hearing and listening to Pesutto and his leadership team, and you go, oh, my God, they're so trans-like, because they deny the truth.
Yeah.
That's all they do is deny the truth.
Yeah. They're very cowardly. They're very cowardly, and you know, they come across like a pack of used car dealers. It's shocking really to think that those people are in a position of authority.
Yeah.
And that I could be dragged before a court for saying so, because I have a disparagement clause in my agreement that I didn't know about at the time. That means that, you know, I'm allowed to make political commentary, but at any time, you know, someone could say, oh, that's disparaging, that's not acceptable, and drag me back into court. Yeah. So I've had to watch my back. It's one of the reasons I haven't been on any podcasts, or I haven't done my own podcast, is that I've had this shadowy feeling of someone watching over me for the last 18 months, trying to, you know, get information to harm Moira in the case. And until the verdict, you know, I still feel as if I'm, you know, I have something hanging over me. And it's a really awful way to feel, that, you know, someone might watch this video and find something to complain about. So,
welcome to Australia, Jesus.
It is. It's authoritarian and it's frightening, but it's not going to stop me, you know. And I think now that things have settled in my personal life, and I'm feeling more, you know, like I'm in a completely different job now. I'm in a completely different space, so I'm better equipped to handle all of it. And you know, I'm even more committed to not shutting up, because the old saying, you know, that doesn't kill you. You know, I sort of feel that I've got nothing left to lose now, so they can throw whatever they like at me. You know, what are they going to do? Jail me? They can either jail me or kill me. That's it.
It's a book, Angie, and a mini series.
Oh, look, if I had the energy,
who would play you?
Who would play me? I don't know. I'd like to have someone funny. Like I think of someone. I don't know whether you guys watched The Bold and the Beautiful when it was on back in the olden days, but there was this really theatrical woman called Sally Spectre, or B from Prisoner, or one of these really theatrical women. But realistically, probably Rose Byrne, because she looks a little bit like me. I don't know, but I'd rather someone.
It's nice to see you thought about it.
Yeah, or even a drag queen. Oh, because in that Nazi court case, before all of this turf stuff happened, the cops used to say to me, this case is so bizarre that this could be a miniseries. So we'd make all these jokes about, who was going to play who. But, yeah, I'd probably for me, to be a drag queen, because Netflix would say that I had to be played by a drag queen. I don't know, to be something funny. And bring it on, I don't care. As long as they're funny and they look okay,
So what do you predict to come out of this court case? I predict that it's going to go in Moira's favour. I don't see how it can't.
Well, I would too, but after what I've been through, where objective reality has been thrown out the window, and we've had just complete lies and fraudulence and just craziness, then I'm almost too scared to be positive.
Yeah.
Which is an awful feeling too. Like we've done nothing wrong. None of us have done anything wrong, particularly Moira. I mean, for her to experience what she did on the basis of an association with me and Kellie-Jay, I barely knew Moira when that event happened. I think I'd met her twice before. We'd had a couple of phone calls around the organising of the event, but she wasn't, someone who was closely associated with me. So, for that to happen to her, on the evidence alone, I believe that she should be vindicated. However, I don't trust the system. I trust the judge, but I don't trust that the law hasn't been compromised by ideologues or whoever. I just don't have any faith in systems anymore. I think the judge is a very sensible man, though, and I'd like to put faith that his common sense will override any resistance he faces to state the facts.
No, it's that it was a live feed. So, and it would be very hard to then find in favour of Pesutto after so many people have watched this live. And
sorry?
No, go ahead.
Well, so many people watched it live, but also the media didn't report on the vindication. They reported on the crimes. Like the 7:30 report had me running into the bushes and saying, and Angela Jones made this tweet and showed the tweet, making me look like a criminal. But when I was vindicated and Mr. Pintos Lopez said that I was completely exonerated of any links to neo-Nazis, nobody reported it. So, we have this surreal situation where everyone who watched the live stream knows what actually happened, but nobody else does.
The ABC, though, my God, they have to go.
They do.
They really have to go. Years and years ago, there were people going, the ABC has to go. They shouldn't be taxpayer funded. And now after the last couple of years, I completely agree. They need to go.
I used to donate to the ABC.
Oh.
So, I was like that. I was like, how dare you? We need our national broadcaster, blah, blah, blah. It's the only voice that we have for people who aren't rich, and now look at me.
Yeah, once they were a very important part of Australian society, but not now because they've been completely and they don't tell the truth.
They don't.
So a waste of taxpayers' money be funding the ABC when all they are doing is pushing the trans agenda. And
unfortunately, a large swathe of Australians still believe that the ABC is the bearer of truth. Like people who saw me on 7:30 and they hadn't been following the case, they said, what was that? You were on ABC. And so there's a legitimacy that just being on the ABC gives to the lies that they spread. So that's the danger. It's not knowing who's seen it and if they're going to believe it or not. And you're walking around the whole time, if someone looks at you sideways, when people say, I know you to me, I think they know me because of this turf stuff. And it scares me sometimes. So, you're always aware that that information might have only gone out to a few thousand people, and only 3 people paid any attention to it. But if those 3 people are like your boss, the principal at your kid's school, and the person that you're about to apply to a loan to, then you're in trouble, So, yeah, when that sort of information's out there on the public record, but the vindication or the alternative viewpoint isn't, it's not nice. It's not nice at all.
So if Moira wins, do you think they just won't report it?
I think they'll play it down. I think they'll play it down, because what happened in the room at the start of the trial, there were heaps and heaps of journalists. Now, it's normal for the interest in a trial to drop off, but it really savagely dropped off when it looked like the women were going to be vindicated. Like when the situation turned away from Nazis, and turned to, well, maybe they're not Nazis. It went from 20 journalists in the room to 2. On the last day, there was 1 journalist. And remember that wonderful speech that Miss Chrysanthou made? There was 1 journalist in the room.
It's shocking, isn't it?
It is. I think there was 3, but I remember in the morning there was only 1 journalist there. So, yeah, and they're tied too, because I know there's a couple of journalists, because we don't really acknowledge each other because it is a court, but there's a couple of journalists there that I believe were trying to tell the full story, but their editors just won't. They've got a narrative to sell, and that's it.
And when is the verdict due?
Well, they said early December, but that judge has got to wade through a crazy amount of paperwork and he's watched all these videos that have no relevance. And it's funny because the videos that he was forced to watch, some of them, they were presented as evidence from the other side, but they made us look excellent.
Yeah.
Like that one at the start of our rally where there's all this, like Rukshan's video where there's all this chaos and, and the Nazis are here and these people here and these people. And then this little yellow phoenix rises up like a sunflower and just brings this energy. And that's Kellie-Jay Keen.
Yeah.
This woman that we've just heard for 3 weeks, what a despicable, horrible, evil neo-Nazi she is. And she's like this thing that just bursts and isn't bringing negativity at all, but she's bringing like humor and, and sensitivity and, and power. And the judge got to see her how we see her.
Yeah. And they try and play it up when she gets back, because you have to treat these trans activists when she said, hello, boys.
Yeah.
You don't understand when you go out and do a public event, how these trans activists behave. And like in Melbourne, like we have it, I guess, lightly in Brisbane because there's so few of them. But in Melbourne, when women get up to speak, there's hundreds of them.
Yeah.
And aggressive, they wear armour. And that's what the public don't understand. These men come dressed in armour. They attack police horses.
Your mate Andy Medical is one of them too. So we have actual MPs or ex-MPs.
Yeah, the Animal Justice Party MP of Victoria, he's in there wearing the safety goggles. This is the last one where Michelle and what was it called, that group? And here he is wearing safety goggles and you can see his hand touching the horse. This is an animal activist, a man that was in Parliament representing animals, and here he is out there.
Trying to bash women.
Yeah, no care for the animals.
No.
He hates women so much that he do.
Yep.
He's completely, in my opinion, he's completely destroyed the Animal Justice Party, and that's how low these activists are, these trans activists. They don't care what platform they infiltrate and take away the message from that group. They just don't care.
But they are going to rename the AJP, aren't they, to the AGP?
Well, I think Angie did that quite some years ago now, didn't he?
But do you think the tide is turning though, Angie? Because I kind of feel like, especially with America, if things change over there, then it's going to hit us, isn't it? It's going to follow.
See, I would think so. I think so. I hate to be a negative Nancy, but I definitely believe the tide is turning. I think the general public's waking up. They're sick of trans. They knew something was not right about it from the get-go. And now the information's leaking in from overseas, because remember, the mainstream media is gaslighting them. The information's leaking in overseas that childhood transition is terrible, that adult transition is, the outcomes are not great either, and that women's rights have been absolutely and utterly decimated. Now, most Australians don't know until it affects them personally, but their kid comes home from school and says, I want to cut my breasts off, or until they're in a change room pulling up their undies and look between their own legs and see a man standing there looking. So, you know, most women or most people aren't aware until it impacts them, or there's a male on a female sports team or whatever. So I think people are waking up, particularly, you know, with what's happening in America, though. What we're seeing is the Americans are waking up. They're waking up in the UK. But here in Australia, the politicians are still doubling down. If Peter Dutton won't come out strongly and say, we are going to make exemptions to self-ID or repeal it, or, you know, if he won't come out strong, then there's not a hope in hell that we'll repeal any of this. Now, they're gutless.
Because I don't know, because we know that federally the Liberals are against it, and like in Queensland the LNP's against it, but they seem to have this fear, like they don't know that the majority of the public that know about this don't support it. If they opened up that conversation, which is what Donald Trump did, he opened up the conversation, and so many Americans, and they've tried to downplay that part of the loss for the Democrats was gender-critical people. But
I think they do know. I really believe that they do know. I think they read the comments. When they talk about trans stuff on social media, they read the comments. They know the tide has turned. They're doubling down because of all the money involved, and because of, you know, activist politicians like, you know, Alex Greenwich, for example, because the Teals are all on board with the trans stuff. You know, if they want to get things put through the Senate, then they've got to, you know, be on the right side of some of these senators that are pro-trans. I think there's so much at stake for them as politicians that they don't really give a damn what the public need or want. It's all about protecting their own asses and their own interests.
The thing, though, is the writing's on the wall. So do they be on the right side of history or on the wrong side of history? So if they're so worried about their public image, because anyone that supports this will be known in history as being on the wrong side, particularly with what for children, the sterilisation, and mutilating children's bodies.
Yep.
Got to be, who would ever have thought that would ever happen, that these kids would be used to progress an agenda by the adult men claiming they're women, so they can say, oh, look at all these kids that are transitioning. You know, this is what we went through. And, you know, bullshit, they never went through it. They've never had gender dysphoria, because if they had gender dysphoria, they would have the operation to get rid of their...
What is gender dysphoria anyway? When you do your protests and stuff, Angie, when you go out with your signs and stuff, do you get protesters against you?
We get people come past and they call us Nazis or bigots, or, you know, you bigots, or they'll come up and argue with us about, or call us transphobes, basically. They don't actually argue; they just call us names. But yeah, we do get people in the street say things, but you know, you try and engage them in a conversation and they walk away. So I've felt threatened in the inner city. I've been chased and had people point at me and scream that I'm a Nazi, and that was quite terrifying. I am wary of being king hit, but just at the general times where Louise and Juanita and I go out and hold up pickets, we get a bit of pushback from people giving us dirty looks or calling us names, but we've never felt actually threatened. But we don't advertise that we're doing it beforehand, because if we did that, we'd be met with a crowd of aggressive men trying to beat us up.
Yeah, we did an action outside Shannon Fentiman's office the week before the Queensland election, and
excellent.
We made this on a sheet, which is always really effective. The sheet with the "No child is born in the wrong body," and people go, "Oh, you did it?" And you think you can't even accept that telling children they were born in the wrong body is the wrong. You cannot understand how
our usual group of protesters are dwindling. I mean, they used to be like 3 or 4 times their number, and now it's just literally 5 or 6, was it last time, Sue?
Yeah, it
In
was
Melbourne.
very big. But the thing is, they had an arrangement with the police that they would behave themselves and they'd keep at a distance. But at the last month, they breached that agreement and there were scuffles on the ground with the police.
Ooh.
So the police are being assaulted.
They hate the police with a passion.
Yeah.
And the police will bend over backwards for them. It's craziness.
Yeah, they won't arrest them, even if they are assaulted by them. They don't get arrested. And they say to us that they can't arrest them because there has to be 2 police for every person that they arrest. And if they arrested them, that would leave us more vulnerable. But the thing is, they could still give them surely a ticket. And they could follow. But the thing is, when we did our last Speaker's Corner, it was the day after that, the LNP one. And so we don't have a Labor. So it was too early for the Liberal, the LNP police minister to be put in place. And Mark Ryan, the police minister, obviously didn't want them stopped.
So we'll have a new police commissioner now.
Yeah, we've got I know his name, but I can't remember it. But yeah, hopefully we'll get more action. The police will be able to do more without the police minister stopping them from taking action against them, because the police should not be assaulted. Allow the group to assault police without any ramifications. It's wrong. No one should be assaulting the police.
If we behaved how they behaved, we would be arrested.
Yeah. Well, we had one person that went outside of our zone into their zone and they were threatened with arrest. So
can I just say something? I always get round to watching your videos of your street action, right? It might be a month later, but I always watch them. And I've got to say that, particularly for you two, but because you're doing it regularly, your speeches are just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. It's really amazing to watch, like how they've gone from, meek with the microphone, sort of, I'm nervous, to, and giving a good serve to the hecklers.
You were getting with them.
Yeah, it's been really amazing to watch your confidence grow as activists. It's good, and it's really sad for me because I would love to be out on the streets. It's just not safe in Melbourne. It's just not safe.
You need to come up here. You can be a special.
Yeah. I'd love to.
I first heard about a speakers event from Turf Talk Down Under like 2 years ago. So that's the reason why I went, because you and Stasia mentioned it, that there was one happening. And
I would never
now
speak.
we're doing our own, and it's so empowering.
Yeah.
It's fucking awesome to see like new people coming all the time that come for a couple to support, and then they get up and speak, and it's affecting, they've got something in their life where they're being affected by this. And they're actually getting up and they're speaking.
Yeah.
It's more and more. And there's less and less of the blue fringes.
We had someone that came up from the Gold Coast at our last one, and she got up and spoke. And so we had 2 new women that got up and spoke in October. And they were excellent too. They were really good speakers.
Yeah. And we're just going to keep doing it every month.
Good. My worst nightmare is public speaking. Like I couldn't do the mic, but I could plug the amp in, and I can do security, I can do anything else, but actually getting up there with the microphone is my worst nightmare.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
No, I don't think none of us do, I think, but
like we don't really want to be doing this. Like we don't want to be standing up getting abused by these lunatic men for saying that women don't have penises and stop cutting kids up.
Yeah.
Like we don't want to be doing this, but if we don't do it, what's the alternative?
Yeah. There's so many of us that we're accidental activists. Like if someone told me 10, 20 years ago, this is the turn that my life would take, that, you know, that we would be part of a women's rights movement trying to, you know, get single sex spaces back for women. I would have thought it was crazy. You know, it was always the other women, you know, there's always these women more credentialed that were going to, you know, do that sort of stuff. And to find, you know, myself included in a ragtag bunch of women from all political persuasions, just patching together a grassroots movement that is just growing and growing and growing. It's just amazing. And I think the reason for that is that there's enough of us that are old enough to remember the second wave. I think if second wave, you know, I think the further you get away from second wave feminism, you forget that we started from nothing. And this is where the young activists underestimate us. They might have control of the media, control of the politicians. They might have all the money, but we're a grassroots movement. And that's why we're going to win.
And that's what it's been all throughout history with women.
Yes.
So men underestimated the power of women when they get together.
Yeah.
I mean, do this themselves.
Yeah, well, we started a women's support group in my local area, and we're self-funded because we couldn't actually get government funding without ticking a box that said that we'd include men. Now, this is a support group for mothers who've experienced family violence. Yet we still had to tick that box that said, yeah, men would be welcome. So a dad could turn up and say, oh, well, I'm a mother too because I have children. So we weren't prepared to do that in order to get our funding, because what could have happened is that we would have got the $10,000 grant from the local government or state government, and we'd refuse to let a man in, and then they'd tell us that we had to give our money back, and we didn't want to do that. So, yeah, we've self-funded. But the reason that we were able to do this is because of, you know, when we were young, we saw our mothers or our grandmothers or, you know, the local women's liberation group or whatever start these groups from nothing and then build on them. And, you know, we're going to have to just go back and do that again because, you know, headbutting against the system to try and get our spaces back isn't working because, you know, they're just ignoring us. But what we can do is we can start, you know, with one or two people and just start from nothing again and build like they did back in the 50s, 60s and 70s and recreate female-only spaces. I think that's what we're just going to have to do.
Yeah. What an incredible journey for you, though, Angie, because your name is now in the history book.
I don't think it is. I'm the other woman. Like I'm this person whose life has been completely and utterly turned upside down by everything that's happened. But because I'm from the left, it's really important that it doesn't get out that you know, this woman who was your cliched, typical vegan, lefty feminist is part of the gender critical movement. So, you know, out of everyone, I'm probably the one, out of me, Kellie-Jay and Moira, I'm the one who's the most danger to somewhere like the ABC, because it was my ABC. It was my left, because I was an anti-fascist actively. So this, you know, so they're determined that I will not be in the history books. And part of me, like, because I'm like, you know, because I'm a fairly shy person, part of me is like, good, just leave me out of it. But then I think after everything I've been through, it's really important for me because, you know, like particularly, you know, the last 18 months, it's been really hard for me to be a good mum sometimes. And I want there to be enough of a record that my kids understand, you know, like things like this. Why is mum doing all these Zoom things? Why is mum getting so many phone calls? You know, why is mum involved with so many lawyers and taking time off work and coming home late to go to court? You know, they don't understand because they're kids, they're teenagers, they're not part of this world, thankfully. So I hope that there is just enough of a record of my involvement in this that my kids look me up when I'm dead and go, oh, wow, you know, mum, even if it's just because we did Turf Talk Down Under, that's enough. You know, that is enough that there's something that says, you know, oh, mum wasn't just talking crap. She really, you know, she was part of something. And that is what keeps me going. That's what's really, really important for me on a personal level, because the cost on me personally and on my children has been massive. And I don't want, you know, personal recognition or anything. You know, got it. You know, it's quite obvious that I'm not trying to create a name for myself. You know, I'm not, you know, if I did, I would have kept going with the podcast and fancied it up, and I'd make more effort to brush my hair, and, you know, but I just I hope that what I've been through means something when it comes to getting our rights back, and when it comes to making other women feel more confident about expressing their demand for female-only spaces, female-only roles, and female-only sports. You know, I want them to think, well, if some frazzled 55-year-old mum can do it, then they can too. And you look, the worst, apart from jail and killing me, the worst has already happened to me, and I'm still here. So, you know, you lose your job, who cares? You know, don't be afraid. Just do it. Just do it.
Yeah, and the more and more women and men, because there's a lot of men that are concerned also, the more that people do it, they can't sack the entire workforce, because we're going out doing outreach that the vast majority of the public don't agree with it. They're opposed to it. And it's the fear that keeps them from speaking out. But, you know, if everyone spoke out and then the economy would crash. And we all know that the government would choose the economy over trans people.
It's the public service, you know, because it's rife in the public service. You know, there's resistance building, but they've just got to do it. People have just got to, you know, but we've also got to create legal support for people. So women are less afraid, men are less afraid to say, no, I don't want those pronouns in my bio. No, I'm not going to do this diversity training because it's bollocks. You know, that they're going to have the courage because they know that there will be a resource that will back them if the worst situation happens. But what usually happens isn't the worst situation. What usually happens is they have a to and fro with, you know, whoever they've been reported to, and they go, look, I agree with you too, but, you know, but just toe the line. And then it all goes away. You know, they've managed to convince everybody, and this has been deliberate, that if you speak up, the worst possible thing will happen. But that's not true. It's funny. Oh, there's people that I'm now associated with that I just would have dismissed as cookers or right-wing nut jobs or whatever. And now, like, well, I'm probably one of them, you know, and I feel really bad that I was uninformed, just like the everyday person out there who thinks puberty blockers are safe because the ABC said they were. I'd been misled. It wasn't that I thought these people were, you know, I had been misled. You know, we all thought that the COVID vaccines were safe. And, you know, now there's tangible evidence that they weren't. Some of them were actually quite dangerous. They've been, you know, withdrawn. So, you know, things that I once had very strong opinions on, because I've been the person that has, you know, experienced what I have, I've had to go back and reassess all my other opinions and say, okay, where was I being misled? What are the facts, you know? And go and reevaluate everything. And I've had to make a few apologies to people that I've now become, you know, closely associated with, who I dismissed as cookers. I might have trolled a bit on social media and stuff, and I've gone and said, look, I actually agree with you, and I think you're really brave for standing up before I had the courage to do it.
Oh, because that's great.
You want to believe that the government's doing what they're doing in the best interest of the public. And so therefore, you think anyone that's opposing that go, oh, the government wouldn't do that. They really care about the public. And now we know that they don't.
I think that they made a mistake with Albanese, because you can tell that he doesn't believe the things that he's actually advocating for, because he was an old sort of traditional Labor. He was more like Bill Shorten. They were, you know, pro-working class, you know, whatever. And I think they elected him as leader because they were trying to say, oh, look, we're really still there for the working class because we've got Albo here, rather than pick someone who was an obvious progressive, right? And so, but I think that they've made a bad decision, because it's very clear to the public that Albo's saying all this stuff, but it's like his mouth's moving, but he doesn't actually believe what he's saying. And, you know, people saying he's the worst prime minister that we've ever had. So, you know, that's a pretty big call. I don't know if I agree with it, but I think that he was a poor choice of leader for the people that are trying to get this agenda through, because he doesn't have a hope in hell. Like, he's as transparent as anything. You can't believe a word that's coming out of his mouth. You know, I think he will definitely lose at the next election. What alternative will we have? Will we have Labor light in the Liberal Party, or you know, will we just have teals everywhere dividing everything, and will we just have, you know, a chaotic sort of half-assed uniparty that's bickering and can't pass anything.
But the Liberals surely at the federal level look at the state and go, well, this isn't our brand. How can they continue with a Liberal party like the Victorian Liberals? Because they're not Liberal. They do not have conservative values. They're more worried about getting the votes of the transgender community. And you think if they had half a brain, they would realise that we outnumber that community.
Yeah.
And so all these people, because I will never go back to the left. I've made a decision. I will never trust them.
I won't either.
And thousands of Australians have left the left and probably will never go back because we can't trust them. And this is what the Liberals need to realise, that we're now depending on them. And if they don't do what they should do, then we'll find an alternative to them. And because we won't put up with the bullshit. Liberals have to really stand up and start speaking out and open up this conversation. If they just open the conversation, it would open the floodgates.
Oh yeah.
This is why the verdict in the Deeming trial is so important. Because either way that it goes, the judge is going to have to give a reasoning to how he came to that decision. And it's going to put a spotlight on the Victorian Liberal Party.
Yeah.
And we have a responsibility to make sure that the Federal Liberal Party and the state Liberal parties all really understand what's happened here.
Yeah.
Particularly if Mr. Pesutto loses the leadership over it, which I suspect that if it finds in Moira's favour, he's gone. He's a dead man walking.
Yeah.
Because they can't keep him.
He should go because they're a pack of liars as far as I'm concerned. And I think they're wasteful. And I've watched Pesutto, and you know what? I have loved watching Sue Casanto. That woman is an absolute legend. And even before she got up, like when Moira was on the stand and Dr. Collins was cross-examining her, and when Sue Casanto would get up and, intervene, just thought, I can't wait until she's cross-examining John Pesutto. And that woman is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. See, I think Dr. Collins, I think he was a very competent barrister, but his client, he's working on behalf of someone whose evidence was not just flimsy, it was non-existent. Yeah, I felt sorry for him. I did. He said some pretty horrible things about me, but that's his job. He was acting, and I felt bad that people were attacking him online because basically he's acting on behalf of his client, and his client had no evidence. He had no solid evidence that we were anything like what we'd have been accused of being. So
I just think a win for Moira will be a win for all of us in this.
She really does deserve a win. And I would love to see Moira in federal politics because I think that's what's lacking in politics are people like Moira.
I was sobbing on the last day of the trial. I was absolutely sobbing. Moira was like, holding it together, and I was like bawling my eyes. It was quite pathetic, actually. But I was just emotionally just exhausted.
Yeah. No, you've been through it, Ange. You've really been put through it, because we thank you for everything you've done. Thanks for coming to talk to us.
Oh, thank you. Anytime. It's nice to be invited.
You're an absolute legend, Angie.
Yeah,
honestly.
you are.
Oh, thank you. I'll get embarrassed. No, I'm just muddling along like any of us. I'm just muddling along, and if someone asks me to do something that will help our movement, I generally do it, if it's within my capabilities. But I'm just muddling along, doing what I can, doing what I can in real life too. Because for me, how I live my life and my real life, and what I do for women in my real life is probably more important than, what I am trying to do online, even though they're kind of linked, and I just hope I get my name cleared, because it's not clear now. I've been vindicated, but nobody knows about it. So I just hope that I have an opportunity to clear my name for my children's sake, and also to secure my future, because, I still got to work for the next 15, 20 years. And I don't want to be doing what I'm doing now.
Angie, you write a book.
No, I'm too brain fried, and I'm not talented enough as a writer, but but I think it would make an interesting book. I might have to get someone to ghostwrite it for me, but so if you know any good writers.
Going through another court case, like when I listened to that podcast, because I know you'd mentioned it before, but until I listened to that podcast, I thought, oh my God, this is unbelievable.
Some crazy shit.
Can you just say the podcast? What was the podcast again?
Doxed, and it's from the ABC background briefing, and it's DOXXED, and it's funny because Osman Faruqi and Alex Mann are two ABC journalists who are very, very much on the left, and they were the ones who, you know, had me on their podcast. So that podcast won awards, and the ABC dumped me like a hot potato as soon as I came out as having gender critical views. Even though, you know, people say to me all the time that this ongoing drama with the stalker is fascinating because of its links to neo-Nazis, because it's followed me all over Facebook and Twitter, and, you know, and because this guy, of the position he holds in the community that he lives in, and because he's had all these charges that he's faced for guns that the police didn't follow up on. So there's, you know, allegations of police corruption, and there's all sorts of different factors. You know, people have randomly died. You know, it's just this crazy thing. And then all of a sudden my life gets even more crazier for being associated with the Let Women Speak rally. You know, it's just like, ugh. And, you know, this is not, you know, when I envisaged myself, you know, as a young activist or gung-ho, I thought that by my age I'd be semi-retired, something like that. I never expected that I would be, you know, pushed into this political movement and having all these bizarre things happening to me. So, yeah, it's a strange place to be. But, you know, if I hadn't been involved in this, I wouldn't have met people like yourselves and, you know, the other wonderful women that I've met. You know, I mean, I've spoke at Parliament House. Like, I've done some astonishing things because I've been part of this movement. Or even being involved with the Let Women Speak rally, you know, is a phenomenal thing in itself. It's such an entity of itself. And, you know, some amazing things have happened. But, you know, I am very exhausted.
It's not just a book, Angie. It's a Netflix series.
It is a Netflix series. That'd be funny. Imagine we'd all get cameos. We'd have to all have cameos, but it'd be funny. It'd be really funny. It's going to get me, Gail, or someone to play Moira. You know, some Amazonian brunette. Yeah.
Pretty incredible time in history. It's not something like I've been retired almost 10 years, and like with animal activism into this, I don't think I've never felt like I had fully retired.
Yeah. It's only if we could only get paid for it like the men do. You know, the male bro podcasters, you know, there's men who make a career out of speaking up about gender critical issues, and all the women who've lost everything, very few of us make enough money to live or make enough money to even pay for like attending, you know, to making placards for protests, let alone anything that would, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be really nice if it was the grift that people accuse it of us of being, and we could all, you know, make it our career. But it takes up, you know, this movement takes up at least a 40-hour week in my life, and there's very little remuneration for it. You know, apart from the satisfaction of being part of something that is so phenomenal.
So you think about what women before us have done to get where we were. Like, it was never full equality. And it was social equality. It wasn't because, as these men are claiming, well, you wanted to identify as men, so you've made your bed lie in it. That's bullshit. It was never identifying as men. It was just social equality, like having a credit card, owning property, a vote, equal pay.
Yep.
And that's what has brought out these. They're not even trans, some of the men. They're just women. They're just men that hate women.
That's true.
Well, thanks, Angie. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.